That being said, I've been very clear. I think we should eliminate the filibuster for Roe and get us to the point where we 51 votes.
You may have heard that Kamala Harris reiterated today that she wants to get rid of the filibuster in order to pass Roe legislation.
Shame on her. Shame on her.
Ain't nothing changed, nothing new here to see. This ain't nothing but some political maneuvering.
America.
Welcome to the eulogy, eat it up. It's called political buffoonery.
Hey there, everybody, and welcome to This Week in DUMBmocracy, where we showcase some of the dumbest newsmakers of the week. I've worked on my fair share of campaigns over the years for different levels of government. I volunteered for some, I got paid for others, but in every campaign I always made it a point to engage in conversations with the campaign manager, the consultant in charge, whoever was running things, to pick their brain a little bit about campaign politics. And from those conversations, I think I can safely say that most campaign consultants and managers on a campaign fear their candidate above all other things in an election. What do I mean by that? Well, candidates go off script. They think they know better than everybody else, and in a lot of ways commit unforced errors, not in response to any opponent attack or any report that came out in the media, but some self-prompted mistake, some self-inflicted wound that occurs when they go off message or go off script.
Why did I do this to myself?
The Harris campaign can't afford unforced errors. She's walking a very delicate tightrope between the mainstream thought in her party and a lot of the leftists and progressives in her party that hold sway over some portions of the electorate. But I never thought that she would have to walk a tightrope over the issue of reproductive rights. It should be a strong point in her campaign. It resonates with a lot of female liberal voters, especially after the repeal of Roe v. Wade. Kamala Harris is going around promising to restore the Roe standards and codify that in our laws. But in an interview in Wisconsin this week, she may have gone a step too far in alienating some of the more central members of her own party when she discussed nuking the filibuster in order to get those Roe standards restored. It certainly offended Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia. We're going to be discussing not only what happened during this week concerning that interview, but also get into the issue of whether or not the filibuster is good for democracy and for our representative republic. But before we get to all that, please subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any other shows. And if you like what you're seeing here in this or any other video on the channel, I'm going to ask you guys to please smash that thumbs up button. Like, comment, share the show with your friends, all that really, really good stuff, because all that's going to help grow the show via the YouTube algorithm. Feed me! As always, gang, thank you so much for all that you do to help grow the show, whether it's liking and sharing the video, subscribing to the channel, or joining us every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time as we go live with our brand new show, Behind Enemy Lines. Me and Ross Galloway have a great show planned for later on tonight. I hope you join us later to have a little bit of fun discussing the politics of the day. All right, we got all the pleasantries and grifting out of the way now, so let's get into the video, and we're going to start with the interview that Kamala Harris participated in with a radio station in Wisconsin. On Tuesday of this week, Kamala Harris appeared on Wisconsin Public Radio, where they were given 4 questions to ask the Democrat designee for president. We've discussed this before. She wasn't nominated. She was designated after they threw Joe Biden under the bus. So one of the questions that Kamala Harris had fired at her was discussing reproductive rights and restoring Roe v. Wade. And this is what transpired.
But let me just back up for a moment. Look, I grew up a middle-class kid. My mother worked long days, she worked weekends, and she was able to save up so that by the time I was a teenager, she was able to buy our first house.
Whoa, wait a minute here. That's not the clip I wanted to play. Although, yeah, she did repeat that same line in this interview up in Wisconsin, like she's done at the debate, like she's done in Philadelphia, like she's done all over the place.
Same exact thing every time.
But that's not the point of this video. Let's get back on track here.
Now to abortion. You've said you want to work with Congress to pass a federal bill to codify abortion rights. How do you plan to get enough support in Congress to restore abortion rights when you'd likely need to pass a Senate filibuster? You'd have potential legal hurdles.
It's a valid question. To restore Roe v. Wade in legislative form, in a statute that would then go to the president's desk for signature, they would need to get support of 60 senators. Now, we know about the divisiveness that's going on in today's politics, and we've seen over the years that's very hard to get to that 60 vote threshold, given the acrimony between the parties, and given that the electorate is split in what party affiliation senators are these days. It's very slim margins that people are dealing with. The 60 vote filibuster requires compromise to get things done in the Senate. How does Kamala Harris plan on dealing with this? She plans on dealing with it by nuking the filibuster.
Well, let me first say to all your listeners, you must reelect your Senator Tammy Baldwin, because we need the votes in Congress to do exactly what you are saying, and that's true. And it is well within our reach to hold on to the majority in the Senate and take back the House. And so I would also emphasize that while the presidential election is extremely important and dispositive of where we go moving forward, it also is about what we need to do to hold on to the Senate and win seats in the House. That being said, I've been very clear. I think we should eliminate the filibuster for Roe, and we need and get us to the point where 51 votes would be what we need to actually put back in law the protections for reproductive freedom and for the ability of every person and every woman to make decisions about their own body and not have their government tell them what to do.
So there it is, clear as crystal. Kamala Harris wants to nuke the filibuster. When news of this interview got out and got to the ears of Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia, he was not too happy about this.
You may have heard that Kamala Harris reiterated today that she wants to get rid of the filibuster in order to pass Roe legislation.
Shame on her. Shame on her.
Like I said, Joe Manchin is not happy about this at all. Joe Manchin tries to be above the partisan fray. He always tries to put country before anything else. At least that's what he says anyway. Reasonable people can disagree about whether or not he actually does that or not. I know many Democrats are very upset with him. And I also know that Republicans are upset with him for being pretty wishy-washy as well.
If you make enemies on both sides of the border, you'll end up dead.
Let's let Joe Manchin make the case for maintaining the filibuster.
She knows that the filibuster is the holy grail of democracy. It's the only thing that keeps us talking and working together. You get rid of that, and this would be the House on steroids.
So I know that you've been considering endorsing her. Does this change your view?
That ain't going to happen.
You're not going to endorse her?
I'm not endorsing her. No.
Denied.
There you have it. Joe Manchin is not going to endorse Kamala Harris. This has become an interesting and, for Democrats, a disturbing trend, as we're seeing unions choosing not to endorse Kamala Harris. The Teamsters, for example, are not endorsing Kamala Harris. Now Joe Manchin, a pretty middle-of-the-road Democrat, is not endorsing Kamala Harris. I'm pretty sure Senator Sinema from Arizona is also not endorsing Kamala Harris. I'll look that up, and I'll put in the comments whether or not I'm right on that, but I'm pretty sure I am. So as I'm editing the video, I can't find anything concrete either way as to whether Senator Sinema has endorsed Kamala Harris. Now back to the show. So it seems like Kamala Harris is losing a lot of mainstream, normally Democrat support, and is doing so by going further and further left than many people would care to go.
I think that's basically something that can destroy our country, and my country is more important to me than any one person or any one person's ideology. I think it's the most horrible thing. And Chuck Schumer knows how I feel about this.
You were going to talk to her, did you?
I haven't.
You have not?
I have not.
But you're saying now that because of this...
I'll talk to everybody. To me, that's beyond, way beyond now. because there's no stopping that. You can't do a little bit of this because of this issue or this issue. The issue we have is no one wants to work together. Well, we're the United States and keep us the United States and not continue to make us a divided state.
Yeah.
And that's what that does.
So Joe Manchin is making the argument that the filibuster is a necessary component of the Senate to have partisans engage with each other. The 60-vote rule is intended for smaller majorities where we're more divided evenly to have legislators come together and compromise for the good of the nation. That's what Joe Manchin believes that the filibuster represents. I tend to agree with it as well. But Kamala Harris seems to think that she can pick and choose where the filibuster will be applied, where it can be applied, and where it should be stricken. And she's identified Roe, which is a controversial topic because it does break on partisan divides. She wants to have purely partisan votes, a majority of whoever's in charge dealing with that issue. And she wants Democrats, obviously, to win. You heard her pitch for people in Wisconsin to vote down the line Democrat. It's a very partisan take that we've seen in the past, especially when Harry Reid was the Senate Democrat leader and was also the majority leader at the time during the Obama administration. He has a different point of view on the filibuster, and I'm going to let him explain his philosophy on it. This is an interview from 2021 on MSDNC with Joy Reid and then retired Senator Harry Reid. Reid retired. He ended up taking ill and passing away soon after this interview. But he discusses his philosophy on the filibuster. In my opinion, Harry Reid nuking the filibuster taints his legacy as a politician, as a statesman, because it widened the divide in partisanship within the Senate. This action by Harry Reid of nuking the filibuster for certain appointments of the then Obama administration led to the tit-for-tat politics that led to Mitch McConnell further nuking the filibuster when it came to the appointment of judges during the then Trump administration, including appointing judges to the Supreme Court, which ultimately led to overruling Roe v. Wade.
Congratulations, you played yourself.
So, in essence, Democrats created their own demise through Harry Reid's decision to nuke the filibuster, and we're all living with it in the aftermath of this decision.
And you did take action as Senate Majority Leader to nuke the filibuster, at least for the cabinet nominees for President Obama were being held up. They were holding up judges at the federal level. They were holding up everything. You nuked it for everything except Supreme Court justices, and then
they filibustered for the first time in the history of the country the Secretary of Defense. Secretary of Defense was a Republican Senator Chuck Hagel from Nebraska. They filibustered everything they could, including they couldn't go after unions head on, so they went after the National Labor Relations Board.
So what? What does it matter that they filibustered on certain appointments? They were using the tools at their disposal, the Republicans, in order to bring Democrats to the table to bring compromise on certain issues. This is where the horse trading in the Senate would happen. You give us certain concessions and we'll allow your appointments to pass. Harry Reid didn't want to come to that table, apparently, so instead he chose what was then labeled the nuclear option.
So the reason I changed the rules with the help of my Democratic caucus is because it's the only way we could get it done. As a result of that, Obama's first term as a president during his first Congress, it is the most successful Congress in the history of the country. Had we not done that, we would not have Obamacare. We would not have the most important and clear-cut change on Wall Street in the history of the country, the Dodd-Frank bill.
And you're to blame.
What Harry Reid is talking about as successes of this Senate and this administration post-nuclear option is not really a success, in my opinion. These were votes, Obamacare, Dodd-Frank, with wide partisan divides. There was no negotiation. There was no concessions granted. There was no tweaking of ideas. It was take it or leave it politics that we're experiencing to this day. In fact, it's only gotten worse because, as I said earlier, after the Republicans took control of the Senate, they used the precedent of Harry Reid's nuclear option decision to get Donald Trump's judges appointed at a clip that was faster than most other administrations, and ultimately tipped the balance of the Supreme Court in Republicans and conservatives' favor. So, excuse me for not considering that Senate move in 2013 a success, or any of the legislation passed a success. It led us down this road where we're almost at a crisis point, a flashpoint in our own politics. We're seeing partisans going at each other with such vitriol that we haven't really seen in a very long time. The civility of politics was almost irreparably harmed by Harry Reid. Like what you see so far? Go ahead and smash that thumbs up button. Also, leave us a comment and tell us what you're thinking. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another show. As is customary with most debates, we allowed Joe Manchin to make his opening statement about why the filibuster must be preserved. We've allowed Harry Reid, and by extension Kamala Harris, to make the argument why the filibuster must go away, in their opinion. So now it's time for Joe Manchin's reply to that rebuttal.
I think I've been very clear my whole career is that the 60-vote threshold that we basically operate under in the Senate is essential for us to maintain the type of type of longevity we need in our bills, the type of security in our bills. And
this is a good point that hasn't been addressed yet. When you get rid of the filibuster, what happens when the power transfers from one party to the other? Well, the incoming party can now look back to the bills passed by the previous in-power party and repeal those and not need 60 votes to do it. By having this 60-vote threshold, you are basically forcing compromise horse trading, and you're also making the bills passed more concrete, because to repeal them, you need to get not just the majority of your own party to go along with that, but you have to get crossover appeal. You have to get bipartisan support. Remember that word, bipartisan? We used to strive for that back in the day. I don't know what happened to it.
Basically how we do business. It makes us different any place in the world. We're the most deliberate body in the world. So I've been very, very, very clear on how strongly I believe that when you go down that slippery path, you don't just do it for one issue. There's so many important issues that people have. What's important to me might not be important to you, and vice versa. So anyone says, well, I'm just going to eliminate the filibuster or the 60-vote threshold for this one subject. Well, Harry Reid tried that with just the district and circuit courts, circuit judges, and then the Republicans came back and did it for the Supreme Court. So once you start down that in policy and on policies, you'll have everything under the sun thrown at and it'll just dissipate. And then you flip-flop back and forth. You have no continuity whatsoever and no stability in what we do here.
Would you endorse her for president then?
I'm not endorsing. I'm not endorsing.
Denied.
I'm definitely with Joe Manchin on this. I think any further nuking of the filibuster is just going to widen the divide of tribal politics that we've been seeing for years since Harry Reid's nuclear option. And I do believe that it is good to have a mechanism in place to sort of force compromise, to force opposite sides of an issue to get together and see if they can find common ground on things. I think the filibuster is necessary for the operations of the Senate. It's necessary to make laws more concrete and not be so malleable and flexible that our laws shift and change with the winds of partisanship. And I think Kamala Harris committed a bit of an unforced error in overstepping a boundary that I think most reasonable Americans listening to this would see as being totally out of bounds and being an unforced error. But listen, that's just my opinion on all this. I want to know what you guys think. Are you with Joe Manchin? Are you with Kamala Harris? Does the issue matter to you, whether it's abortion or some other issue, whether it be the border or something else? Should the filibuster be nuked on an issues basis? Let's talk about that in the comments together. And as always, like and share the show with your friends, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of the shows. Let's get together after this video to discuss these issues and all the other shenanigans and buffoonery happening every day this week in DUMBmocracy.
All views and opinions expressed here are not necessarily of the mainstream media and may offend some listeners. It's called political buffoonery.